January 14th, 1973, Elvis Presley stands backstage in Honolulu, about to perform for more people than any solo artist in history. 1 billion viewers across 6 continents. But this concert isn't about him. It's about saving lives. If you were alive in January 1973, you remember what a big deal satellite television was. Today we take it for granted, live broadcasts from anywhere on Earth. But in 1973, broadcasting live to multiple continents simultaneously was cutting-edge technology. The first global satellite broadcast had been in 1967, Our World, featuring the Beatles performing All You Need Is Love. It reached 400 million people across 5 continents, revolutionary. By 1973, the technology had improved, satellite coverage had expanded, the potential audience was enormous. And someone had an idea. What if we did the first solo artist concert broadcast globally via satellite? And what if that artist was Elvis Presley? Elvis was at a crossroads. The forgettable movie years were behind him. The 1968 comeback special had reminded the world he could still electrify a stage. He'd been touring America successfully, playing Vegas to sold-out crowds. But he'd never performed outside North America. Colonel Parker's refusal to book international tours meant most of the world had never seen Elvis live. A satellite broadcast could change that. In one night, Elvis could reach more people than he'd reached in his entire career combined. Paseta Productions approached Elvis and Parker with the concept. Elvis loved it immediately, but Parker, always calculating, saw another angle. "If we're going to do this," Parker said, "we should tie it to a charity." That's when someone mentioned the Kuili Cancer Fund. Kuili was a Hawaiian songwriter who'd written beautiful songs about the islands, about love, about life. His music had the kind of honesty that made you feel his heart through his guitar. By the late 1960s, his songs were becoming part of Hawaii's cultural heartbeat. Then in 1966, at just 34 years old, Kuili died of cancer. His wife Nani was left with 2 small children and a future that had disappeared overnight. Nani established the Kuili Cancer Fund to help other Hawaii residents fighting the disease. In the early 1970s, cancer treatment was expensive and often unavailable on the islands. Families had to fly to the mainland for treatment, watching their savings evaporate. The fund helped cover travel, treatment, and housing. But there was never enough money for everyone who needed help. When producers suggested making the concert a benefit for the fund, Elvis didn't hesitate. "Let's do it," he said. "All the money goes to them." Colonel Parker expected Elvis to take some payment, maybe donate a portion. But Elvis insisted every dollar from ticket sales would go to the cancer fund. Everything. Parker objected. "Elvis, this is a massive production. Your expenses alone—" "I'll cover my expenses," Elvis interrupted quietly. There was steel in his voice. "The people buying tickets are buying them to help sick people. That money goes where it's supposed to go." Parker recognized that look. When Elvis connected to something that mattered, when he remembered being poor, remembered helplessness, there was no negotiating. The concert was scheduled for January 14th, 1973, at the Honolulu International Center Arena. Elvis arrived a week early. He wanted to rehearse until every note was perfect. This wasn't just another concert. This was global television. 1 billion people. This mattered. But he also wanted to meet families the Cancer Fund had helped. One afternoon, away from cameras, Elvis visited homes where cancer patients were being cared for. He sat with sick children, their small bodies swallowed by hospital beds. He talked with exhausted parents who had the hollow-eyed look of people who hadn't slept in months. He listened to their stories. The diagnosis from nowhere, the crushing cost of treatment, the weight of watching someone you love suffer. Those visits affected him deeply. Friends said he came back to the hotel each evening and went straight to his room without speaking. He'd sit in the dark for hours. Elvis knew death. He'd lost his mother at 23. He understood what these families were facing, the helplessness, the bargaining with God, the desperate wish to trade places. And now he had a chance to help, not everyone, but some. He threw himself into rehearsals with intensity. He worked with costume designer Bill Ballou on the American Eagle suit, white with an elaborate jeweled eagle across the chest and back. Stunning, patriotic, heavy. The weight on his shoulders felt symbolic. He rehearsed obsessively, running through songs until his voice was raw. He wanted classics everyone knew, newer material, and importantly, I'll Remember You, written by Kui Lee. Performing Kui Lee's composition felt like honoring the dead. By January 14th, Elvis was ready but nervous. Standing backstage in that white jumpsuit, hearing the crowd roar, he felt the magnitude. This was bigger than anything before. And somewhere out there, families were watching who needed this to matter. He couldn't let them down. Were you one of the people who watched Aloha from Hawaii live in 1973? Do you remember where you were? Share your memories in the comments. And if you're discovering this side of Elvis, subscribe for more stories about when he used his fame to help others. January 14th, 1973, 12:30 a.m. Hawaii time. The lights dim. 6,000 fans erupt in screams. Around the world, people gather around television sets. In Japan, families crowd into living rooms. In Australia, viewers stay up late. Across Asia and Europe, people tune in. Over 1 billion people watching. Somewhere in that billion were the families Elvis had visited, the children fighting cancer, the parents who'd sacrificed. Everything. Elvis stood in the wings, breathing slowly. Joe Esposito touched his shoulder. You ready? Elvis nodded. He walked out into a deafening roar. He opened with Also sprach Zarathustra, dramatic, powerful, announcing something important. Then, C.C. Ryder, his voice strong, his body moving when music takes over. For the next hour, Elvis performed like his life depended on it. Burning Love, Blue Suede Shoes, Hound Dog, ballads, My Way, What Now My Love, pouring vulnerability into every line. Then came I'll Remember You. The arena quieted. Elvis closed his eyes, thinking of Kui Lee, thinking of the families he'd visited, thinking of his mother, gone 15 years but still alive in his heart. He dedicated the song to Kui Lee's memory and to everyone fighting cancer. When he sang, I'll Remember You, long after this endless summer is gone, his voice carried all the grief and hope that comes with watching someone slip away. People everywhere were crying, because grief is universal, and sometimes a song can hold what we can't say. The production was flawless. Multiple cameras caught every expression. Close-ups showed the sweat on Elvis's face, the intensity in his eyes. Wide shots revealed the massive scale. The satellite feed was crystal clear, a technical achievement that wouldn't be matched for years. In living rooms across the planet, people saw a master performer at the peak of his powers, not the scandalous hip-shaker parents warned about, a man trying to save lives with a song. The concert raised over 75 hones from ticket sales, equivalent to more than 500,000 today. Every penny went to the Kui Lee Cancer Fund and Hawaii Cancer Society, but the impact went beyond that. The global broadcast generated enormous awareness. Donations poured in from countries Elvis would never visit. Within months, the fund received hundreds of thousands more. The Hawaii Cancer Society expanded services, helped more families, funded research, provided treatment that hadn't existed before. Families struggling to afford treatment suddenly had help. Parents sleeping in hospital waiting rooms had housing. Children needing mainland treatment could access it. One woman, interviewed years later, her voice shaking, said, "My mother had breast cancer in 1973. We couldn't afford treatment. We'd sold everything. Then the Cancer Fund helped us, paid for everything. My mother lived another 20 years. I got to have her at my wedding. My children knew their grandmother. That help existed because Elvis did that concert." She paused, wiping her eyes. "I never met Elvis, but he saved my mother's life. How do you thank someone for that?" Stories like that multiplied across Hawaii. Lives saved by a man who could have kept the money but couldn't sleep knowing he'd profited from suffering. Aloha from Hawaii via satellite became the most watched broadcast by a solo entertainer in television history. Estimates range from 500 million to 1.5 billion viewers. When it aired in America on April 4, 1973, it drew 51% of the TV audience. More than half of everyone watching chose Elvis. The album hit #1 and went platinum. Portions of proceeds went to charity. Today, the Hawaii Cancer Society still credits Aloha from Hawaii as their turning point, the moment that gave them resources to save countless lives. In their offices, they keep memorabilia from that night, photos of Elvis in the American Eagle suit, programs, letters from families thanking him. Every January, they hold a memorial honoring Kui Lee and Elvis. Survivors attend, people who got treatment because of that night, their children, their grandchildren. One woman whose father received treatment said, "Elvis saved my dad's life. I got 30 more years with him because of that concert. My daughter knew her grandfather. That's Elvis's real legacy, not just the music, the time, the years, the memories that wouldn't exist if he hadn't cared." Elvis performed thousands of concerts, made dozens of albums, starred in 31 films. But Aloha from Hawaii stands apart because it showed what happens when someone with his fame uses that platform for something beyond himself. He could have demanded a massive paycheck. Parker wanted him to. But Elvis insisted on giving it away because he'd met those families. He'd seen the fear in parents' eyes. He'd held hands of sick children who looked at him like magic had walked through their door. He couldn't walk away without trying to help. That's the Elvis his closest friends knew. The Elvis who couldn't see suffering without trying to ease it, who gave away cars, who paid hospital bills, who sent anonymous checks to struggling families. The Elvis who turned the biggest stage in the world into a fundraiser because saving lives mattered infinitely more than money. Backstage after the concert, exhausted, Elvis asked Joe, "Did we raise enough?" Joe smiled. "You raised a fortune. You were incredible." Elvis shook his head. "It's never enough. There's always someone we couldn't help." That was Elvis, always carrying the weight of people he couldn't save. On January 14, 1973, over 1 billion people watched Elvis perform. But the real audience was smaller, the families who needed help, who found hope, who discovered healing because a man in a white jumpsuit decided their lives mattered more than his payday. If this showed you a side of Elvis you'd never seen, please share it. Tell people that behind the fame was a man who remembered helplessness, who used his power to lift those who had none. Subscribe for more untold Elvis stories proving his greatest performances weren't always on stage. Sometimes they were quiet decisions to help people nobody else was watching. And if you can, support cancer research in your own community. Donate. Volunteer. Show up for families fighting right now. Elvis would want you to. He'd want us to remember that we're not remembered for what we earned. We're remembered for what we gave away. Thank you for watching.